Camp. This is Barry, the garden manager. We're going to do a quick tour of the garden today. If you guys have any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to see in the garden or in the barn, let us know and we'll post a follow-up video. So this year we are planting everything from kale to beets to spinach, carrots to lettuce, and the garden looks really nice this year and we miss you so much. And right now what we're growing food for is for the staff. We are doing a staff vegetable box subscription, so the staff will be picking up boxes of seasonal vegetables every week. We're also selling to the general store, which you probably pass on your way to the farm, as well as to a food hub, and we are donating to folks in need who don't have access to fresh produce to support our community. So let's see more of the farm. Here we have our perennial garden for the pollinators that was planted by the FITs several years ago, and you can see it's starting to flower, and there are bumblebees and hummingbirds, and the pollinators are really important because our vegetables that produce flowers, from tomatoes, squashes, peppers, their flowers have to be pollinated for us to harvest the crop. Okay, so since we're not having farm camp this summer, what we're doing is we're taking this opportunity to let some of our fields get some much needed rest. So rather than leave the soil bare, which can lead to wind and water erosion, and also diminish the life in the soil because they're not being fed, we planted this cover crop here. So this cover crop has rye and oats, and the roots from the cover crop will hold the soil in place, so if we get a heavy rain, the soil will stay here rather than go down to our swimming hole or the river. And the roots in the soil will also feed the life in the soil, so when we're ready to plant a crop for food, we can make sure that it receives all the nutrients that it needs. Here we have cauliflower, broccoli, and cabbage, which will be harvested in about 5 weeks. And in between we have radishes. And this is called intercropping. Intercropping is when you plant 2 different kinds of plants in the same bed. And what that does is ensures that you get 2 different crops, so you increase your profitability and productivity. And the leaves also help shade the soil and suppress weeds. And when the radishes come out next week, the broccoli and cauliflower will take over the space and grow nice and large. So we have guinea hens in our garden. The guinea hens eat pests and ticks. And as you can see, they forage and roam around the garden, and they keep me company. They look like little dinosaurs. So at the farm, we grow a diversity of crops, from leafy greens to root crops. Here we have salad turnips. And this year we've been having pests, so you can see here there's some wireworm damage, and the worms basically create these tunnels and channels in the crops. They're still okay to eat, but they're not great to sell. So you can see here that the raspberries are starting to produce flowers that are being pollinated, and this green part here will eventually develop into the fruit of the raspberry. You can see here there's the flower, and a bee or a hummingbird or another insect will come and pollinate it. It'll become this green pre-fruit, and they'll develop into a raspberry probably at the end of July, beginning of August. This is our garlic crop here. It was planted all the way in November. These plants are really tall and vigorous because the seed that we used to plant these in November actually came from the crop from last summer. That's called seed saving. And why that's important is because we are able to produce garlic seed that is adapted to our soils and our climate, and we didn't have to buy seed this year. We just saved it from last year's harvest. We have some perennial herbs and flowers. These are lilies, and here we have some sage, some thyme, some mint, and you'll see here we have this white fluffy stuff. This came from our sheep in the barn. Beth shorn the sheep, and we're using it here as both a mulch and a fertilizer. And how it acts as a mulch is it keeps the water in the soil from evaporating when it is dry or windy, and it keeps it nice and moist. And in addition, it prevents any weeds from coming up, so we don't have to weed.